John D., Meister D., and his cohorts were working with. John Dee's mind was nearly frazzled by his communications, his astral communications with these strange overworld pan-dimensional beings. But he also was to find out that the microbes don't work for free. Yes, they had the answers to the problem of the Stargate, but you see, they don't work for free. You have to pay them. And when John Dee entered into this giant pact, he was to find this out. And he was also to find out what the microbes would want in return for the knowledge they were giving him. And what they wanted was blood. We are aware that the place and the location and the timing are very important. And the letting of blood is very important. Well, if you're dealing on a ritual level as large as what Sir John Dee was dealing with, we also need a vast quantity of sacrificial victims and blood.
Clearly, if he believes this to be true, then it would not be the alien overlords that are the root of the problem, but it would be these spiritual beings that are much smarter and much more bloodthirsty, and in fact are, by his definition, the sole reason for all the wars of recent times. And this is one area that I agree with tSORRY-on on. I believe that there are these macrobes, and that by contacting them, we are giving them access to our dimension, and that they require things like blood. I disagree with tSORRY-on that we should practice these things like Enochian magic. tSORRY-on runs a mystery school in which he apparently teaches people to do different types of divination and other types of ritual. I say that this is what we must not do. tSORRY-on says that it is by magic ritual that these entities are gaining access to our dimension, and it is by them gaining access into our dimension that are causing all the troubles that we are facing. So by logical deduction, we must not practice magic rituals. And once they do gain access to this dimension, there is only one way to get them out, and tSORRY-on certainly is not teaching that. But when you take into account that he believes, like Helena Blavatsky and Rudolf Steiner, that Lucifer, the leader of these macrobes, is very good, then things tend to get a little foggy. Regarding 2012, tSORRY-on's main thesis on the issue is that a galactic alignment, of which kind he doesn't seem sure, and a passing through a certain photon belt is going to cause an enlightenment in the human race, and as a result, a lot of people who weren't ready for this enlightenment are going to have to be dealt with in some way. I shudder to think how. I will show that tSORRY-on is wrong about every aspect of 2012 in ways that can only be chalked up to either terrible research or, at worst, intentional deception. Before we get started on the 2012 theories, I want to play a clip from my video 2012 Debunked to show you the difference between the 26,000 year precession cycle and the 250 million year cycle of the solar system's revolution around the galaxy, because it's going to help you see right through most of what we're about to see and hear. This event is only significant from the Earth's point of view. The precession cycle, or the roughly 26,000 year wobble of the Earth, only causes the effect of the stars changing position on the horizon, and therefore only the effect of a galactic alignment. If you were viewing this from anywhere else in the solar system, it would be totally insignificant. This is only a visual effect, and only from the Earth's perspective. And no gravitational force or radiation can be expected from this event, because other than the tilt of the Earth, nothing will be any different than the last few thousand solstices. We will be no closer to galactic center on that day than on any other day. The other camp of the 2012 alignment issue is probably the more significant one, because it's dealing with the solar system's actual location in relation to galactic center. The idea is that our little solar system is moving around the center of the galaxy every 225 to 250 million years or so. And while doing this, it's also moving up and down in a cycle crossing the middle of the plane every 33 million years. So, the question is, are we going to cross that galactic plane in 2012? Not even close. According to the journal Nature and others, there is evidence of crossing this plane 3 million years ago. This would mean that we are moving away from the galactic plane and won't be due to cross for another 30 million years.
We all know about light. Well, the highest form of light that can manifest physically is photonic. Photonics is discharge from the movement of the electron on an atomic level. And there is purported to be a large belt of photonic energy that every period, a certain age will come in which the whole, not just the planet, but the whole solar system will pass through almost like a car wash. The whole solar system moving through a high radiation band of photonic energy. And if this is the case, this could be one of the reasons it's precipitating the acceleration, the speed, the need of the progeny of the Atlanteans to vacate the planet. Because photonic energy has certain principles. From Barbara Hand Clow's book, The Palladian Agenda, we find that Robert Stanley, who reported on the discovery of the photon band by satellites in 1991, and he commented, these excesses of photons are being emitted from the center of our galaxy. Our solar system enters the area of our galaxy every 11,000 years and then passes through for 2,000 years while completing its 26,000 year galactic orbit. Now, the photon effect is caused by the precession of our solar system and its accompanying planets around the central sun called Alcyon, located in the constellation of the Pleiades. This counterclockwise cyclic precession around Alcyon requires about 25,860 years to make one complete orbit. Our present-day sun, moon, and planets must twice pass through the photon belt during this time. That is, once to the north and once to the south. During this cycle, there are 2 periods of darkness and 2 periods of light. The periods of darkness, which constitute the vast majority of the rotation around the central sun, consist of 2 periods of about 10,500 years. Following each period of 10,500 years of darkness, then we emerge into 2,000 years of total light, which actually constitutes the photon belt. Simply put, we have a cycle lasting about 26,000 years. And for most of this cycle, we're, as we are now, in a period of darkness.
He confuses the solar system's 250 million year circuit around the galaxy with the 26,000 year precession cycle. He then tells us that there is a certain photon belt that we pass through as a part of the solar system's circle around the galaxy. But again, he thinks this circle around the galaxy takes a few 100 million years less time than it actually does. He says it takes 26,000 years. Keep in mind, the 26,000 year precession cycle is just the Earth wobbling on its axis. It isn't passing through anything, it's just tilting in different directions. To say we're going to pass through a nebula as a part of that cycle is lacking a very basic understanding of astronomy, or a will to deceive. The photon belt idea is not something you will find a whole lot of science on. It is mostly from New Age authors who generally couple the idea with vague notions about how our DNA is going to be changed when we pass through it. Some parts of the story can be analyzed scientifically, however, and there is no scientific evidence for the existence of any sort of photon belt. Here's why. A photon is an elementary particle that makes up light. It would require the gravitational pull of a black hole, with light rays being bent around the black hole near the event horizon, forming a photon sphere. Barring interaction with gravity or matter, photons otherwise always travel in straight lines. tSORRY-on keeps showing us a picture of a nebula and saying it's going to be a cloud of very powerful chakra morphing DNA splitting photons. But you can't get a photon to stay put in a nebula, especially one that's supposed to be there every 26,000 years, let alone 250 million years. But there are several more good reasons to prove that this is untrue and deceitful. He implies that Alcyon is the central sun in which the solar system and everything else in the galaxy revolves around. But Alcyon is a star in the Pleiades cluster. This was probably mentioned because most occult writers who talk about a world order causing photon belt say that it's in the Pleiades system, and they also say that we're heading right for it. But that system is some 440 light years away, and the sun, with the Earth, is moving away from Alcyon. We should listen a little more when he says to do our homework.
And he's talking more here about spiritual darkness again. We then emerge into 2,000 years of total light, which actually constitutes the photon belt. We then have 21,860 years of darkness and 4,000 years of light if you take it together. Another way of viewing this phenomena is that in one complete orbit we have 5/6 darkness and approximately 1/6 light, or a 5-to-1 ratio, with darkness being predominant.
This is another example of the intent to keep telling people that there is an illumination coming. Here he is quoting someone who is saying that the 26,000-year precession of the equinoxes is not only tied to the photon belt, which of course is impossible, but he also says the photon belt is related to our spiritual enlightenment, again with no reason to believe that. In a minute I will show you why this is important for the New World Order system.